Hello, welcome to This Property Life. I'm Nick Clayton. I'm your host today, and I'm here with Caroline Clayton again.
Hello.
Hi, Caroline. Now, today we are going to be talking about something that we actually read today. We're back from our Easter break
Yep.
and ready to come into the spring, summer time when things get busy for us.
Yep.
And we're making quite a few changes in our own buy-to-let portfolio at the moment. So actually, this article is really timely.
Really timely.
Today.
So, very bad habit. Wake up, first thing you do, grab your phone, see what time it is, and then get into the news and see what's happened overnight. And my little guilty pleasure is the Deadly Mail.
Straight onto the Daily Mail.
Straight onto the Daily Mail, because you that horrible paper just gives you all the horrible big clickbait titles and everything else. Anyway, so I see this heading. And it's only for the subscribers that can read it. And yes, I'm one of them. I'm selling all 70 of my buy-to-let and buying a boat. Former Royal Navy man says landlords are being forced out of the rental market. And it's quite a long article. I thought, wow, 70 properties, good on him. And started to read it and then nudged Nick, like, have you read this article? You need to read this article. So it was pretty topical, and I think there's a few things in there that we can look at, because we know that a lot of people will read this and say, oh, buy-to-let's dead. This is it. Look at this guy. He's got 70, selling everything and buying a boat. But there's a lot more going on under the surface than what, that headline shares with you.
Well, I think the first thing that people think of is some sort of 70 properties. To most people, 70 properties sounds like a hell of a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, good on him.
But then if someone's got that many properties, I think the public perception would be, the monopoly character, top hat,
Yeah.
mega rich landlord. And here's somebody saying, I've got 70 properties, I make no money, so I've got to sell them all, and all I'm going to get from it is a boat, a small boat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Something that he spent decades, I think,
Yeah,
building up.
decades, yeah.
So that kind of got me thinking is I think I said, that's the perception of what people, what happened, he must be mega rich. What's gone wrong? How can somebody who's got 70 properties feel that they're in a position where they don't make any money
And they have to sell.
and they have to sell everything, and all they're going to end up with after all that time is one small boat?
It's interesting that I read the whole article, and then you read the article, and then you like reading all the comments that the public then make, which is maybe something we can talk about later. But I think that's really interesting about what the general public's perception is of reading an article like that. Because, we're interested in it because this is our industry, but from a lay person's point of view, what their view is on landlords having to sell up, because basically the government has changed the game so much they feel like they've got no choice.
Yeah, I mean, reading the comments, you get the usual, what you would expect, not just from that paper, but from the uninformed when it comes to property, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of it was good, glad that someone's in this position, and, that's 70 properties returned for young people to buy.
Yeah.
Very simplistic view of it, of what's actually really going on here.
Can totally understand that. But what's very interesting in the article is actually the pressure it's going to put on tenants looking for rental properties. That's what people miss is, you landlords are the ones forcing us to the prices of the properties being so high now that we can't afford to buy. But actually, we talked about in this article, 220,000 properties are going to be taken from the private rental market. And what does that do? That increases the demand, which then increases the rents. And so the problem just gets worse. And the landlords are the bad guys.
Well, yeah, and that's what the people looking on. Well, I say people. What I mean is the uninformed look at it, very simplistic view. That person owns 70 properties, therefore people who want to buy properties can't. That's a natural assumption. And actually, when you dig into it, it's, as with many things like that, when you actually dig in and get the actual facts, it's absolutely nonsense. Because what's going to happen? Okay, so let's say 70 properties return to the market and first-time buyers buy them. Great for first-time buyers. What about the big section of the population that can't or don't want to buy a property? and actually want to rent.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of the uninformed people out there miss.
Yeah.
Is that there is a huge, the assumption is everyone wants to buy their own home or can buy their own home. And it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just like there's a whole demographic out there that can't or don't want to.
Yeah.
And so 70 properties now have been taken out of the private rental sector. Great for first-time buyers, potentially. What about renters?
Yeah, it is true.
So now there's 70 properties out of that market, smaller pool of rental properties.
Yeah.
And therefore, what's going to happen to rents? It's not landlord sport that rents go up. It's pure supply and demand. It's basic economics.
Let's lift the lid on
Yeah.
what our chap's problem is. So this is Paul Million.
Please feel free if you hear this, get in touch. We'd love to have a chat with you. And
I'd love to help you because actually we've got some solutions to your problems. And maybe it's just been that you've not had the right advice or as meticulous advice as you could have had. Paul, former Royal Navy serviceman, he's 54. He spent 33 years growing and maintaining a property portfolio, which is fantastic. He did do BRRR from the sounds of it. They even describe it, buy it, add value, refinance it, use that deposit to do the next one.
Well, let's give some numbers. The average property value is 100K, I think.
Yes.
We're talking about the Northeast, Darlington, I think is where his portfolio is.
That's it.
Average rent's around 625 a month.
That shocked me.
Yeah. And each property is leveraged, not over leveraged. We're talking about 65, 70%, which is well within normal leverage.
So he's done everything right. He's done everything right.
Everything right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rent
I'll say about one thing though. Yeah. So he's bought properties, he's done them up, he's then refinanced them, pull money back out, and he's left with 65, 70% leverage.
Yeah.
On 100K properties. Key thing for me is the rents at 65 average.
That sounds
pretty
low.
low to me.
Yeah, it sounds really low. And it might be that he's not been putting the rents up. He talks about knowing all his tenants, which is weird to me, but then he also talks about a letting agent. So it's like, but I don't know what's going on.
Maybe that he uses a letting agent to find tenants, but then he manages the properties himself.
Yeah. It talks about him being an amazing landlord, that he's on top of his maintenance. He's, really helping lots of families, with somewhere to live. He's saying it's a nasty, and this is quote unquote, by the way, nasty cocktail of tax hikes, rising interest rates, and complex regulatory changes that have ground him down emotionally and financially.
I feel the pain.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's been in the business 33 years, so everyone's emotionally broken by that. And anyway, whatever industry you're in.
Well, let's break it down. So what's the pain points? The pain points are, the biggest one probably for him has been Section 24.
Section 24, he talks about a law in that basically he's taxed on turnover as opposed to taxed on profit, which
everywhere you cut it, it's nuts. Any other business in this country gets taxed on profits.
Yeah.
Private rental businesses get taxed on turnover, which is just
absolutely crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
But again, he structured his business and he bought all of his properties in his own personal name.
But when he started, that was what people did. And we did the same thing.
We did. It was the right advice at the right time. And he talks about, well, if I put them into a limited company, then I've got stamp duty and capital gains. But then later in the article says, actually, the properties haven't gone up in value. So it doesn't sound he'll have any capital gains, but he certainly will have stamp duty if he was to structure it that way. There is another solution to that. But that, we're not tax experts. We can't be saying, right, Paul, this is what you should be doing.
We're definitely not going to say that. However, I think I would question whether he's had the right tax advice.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me.
So go and get the right tax advice, because just a blanket saying you can't sell your properties. He's right. He's saying you can't move properties into a limited company to avoid Section 24. You have to sell them in.
Yeah.
That is correct. However, there are mitigating circumstances around rental businesses.
Yes.
Which I think on some of the advice that we've got over time, he would possibly qualify for.
Absolutely.
But again, has he had the right advice? I would say probably not. So go and get the right advice. Go and speak to a tax expert that has done this.
Yep.
And, or more than one, and go and get the right advice on this, because I know that people have done this, but you do have to be structured in the right way There are many hoops to jump through, and HMRC are definitely looking at this. So yeah.
He says, after I've sold everything, I won't have much left because I borrowed more recently to develop new projects, which have been stopped by government red tape. So
right, I'm just going to pause there. I'm just going to come back. I'll come back to that. I know that's what we're talking about. Just wanted, just for anyone that, just to really make it very clear what Section 24 is. So on his numbers, we're talking about his rent, averagely 65 a month, so $7,500 a year. His mortgage, if you say roughly at 6%, which kind of mortgages are at the moment, 5.5 to 6, he's talking about £4,200 worth of average mortgage interest per year, which means that he gets taxed now, not on the difference, which is 3,300. He gets taxed on the full 7,500 a year. And his profit has gone from 100 and, what was it? It says value of his portfolio is about 8 million. So most people hear that and they go, 8 million, he's a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And his name's Paul Million.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that, actually. So £8 million portfolio, everyone goes, wow, he's a multimillionaire. Well, no, because he's leveraged at 65, 70%.
65, 70, which again, not bad.
Still means net worth-wise, a couple of million there.
Yeah.
Right. If he gets full value for selling. But his profit has gone from, what was it, 130,000, I think, down to 43.
Yeah, so he was making nearly 140k a year, which again, off an £8 million poportfolio.
It's okay. So what's?
It's not brilliant.
It's not amazing, but it's okay.
It's okay. I think he could do better for sure. And again, it comes down to those rents. But now it's 43. 43,000. I mean, that is a big.
1,000 net profit. That's a very low yielding portfolio. So, that's the point we look at it. And in terms of, if you're looking at it from a purely business perspective, we go, well, no, it's not performing.
Yeah.
So what do I do? Yeah. So I think, if you take the emotion out of the situation, let's say we were mentoring or coaching or giving advice here, take the emotion away. So you've got a portfolio that's 8 million, you spent years building it up. All really good things, right? The world has changed. Goalposts have moved. It's not your fault.
The rules of the game are different.
The rules again different. So firstly, reassess. Look at, do I fully understand what's going on here? And are there ways that I can mitigate this? So again, right accounting advice, right tax advice, go and get that. Don't make a blanket decision without having all the facts. Okay. So is there a way that I can incorporate the business without the stamp duty and capital gains tax issues? Yeah. So that's going to be a yes or no. Okay. If that's a yes, then just by doing that, Section 24 tax goes away and you're into corporation tax. Yes, there are issues in extracting profits out of the business, but it's a different set of problems. But essentially, you were better off doing that. So that's one thing. Okay, now I'm just going to come back to you.
Me? Right. What for?
Because there was a little hidden, I think.
Oh, yeah. That was the one. That's when I talked out loud and said there's more to this story than what they're printing, which was, after the sale, I won't have much left over because I've borrowed more recently to develop new projects, which have been stopped by government red tape.
Right. Because if you've got an 8 million portfolio at 65, 70%, there's £2.5 million there.
Yeah. I think what's happened is he probably has leveraged more than he's sharing here, or that Daily Mail is sharing. And those projects he's going to be on some kind of high interest development finance, because they talk about development finance, which he's used before. So I think the true reflection under this article is that he's had a development or more than one development go wrong, and he's been left with no choice but to sell up.
So government red tape. So we know what he's talking about here. We're talking about planning issues, about building control issues.
I mean, let's face it, it could be a whole host of things that the government love to wrap red tape around. But
we've been there and done that. We know how painful that's
really painful. And I feel for him because, well, look, the Daily Mail, they love to have that, not just the clickbait, but the sob story. They kind of they love ripping down anyone that's got any kind of success. They will love the story because it's quite sympathetically written in that it sounds like they feel bad for him, which is why I was quite surprised when you were saying that the comments are like quite derogatory about him. But this article is actually written with a tone of, look, landlords are getting shafted here, and there's quite interesting stats where they say Britain's private rental sector saw its value decline by 5.1%, or 48 billion in 2025. That seems like a massive number to. And they're just like, fewer landlords are buying, combined with some investors selling, has resulted in 25.4% fewer homes available to rent in February 2026. That is massive. I mean, for our listeners who are investing in property now as a landlord, it's not easy. You're now feeling this guy Paul's pain, but we are in an industry where there is so much demand, and it's only going to get bigger. And if you can understand and navigate the red tape, the nuances of the new rules of the game, there's a lot of opportunity here. And that's the exciting part. My heart breaks for Paul here, and I think there's more going on.
There is more. I mean, there is another massive issue which is coming in first to main England, which is the Renters' Rights Bill. Okay, but let's break that down. What does that actually mean? So Section 21 evictions goes. Fixed term tenancy agreements disappear. And there's another one which kind of a little bit more under the radar, which is that you can't take closed bids for rent. You have to rent at the advertised price.
You just advertise at a higher rent.
Do you know what? This is another one of those examples where this has been brought in because of one market, and that's London.
Yeah, well, London's a different ballgame.
In London, it's pretty common, massive demand for properties to rent, which tells you one thing, huge demand, right? Simplistic view is property so expensive in London, everyone has to rent. That's not the full picture. There's a lot of people that are transit workers want to rent. You're only here for a year, 6 months, 2 years. So they're natural renters. This meant that, you could take closed bids. So effectively auction your rental properties and take a lot more than what was advertised. So that is now, you can't do that. So they've brought that in for the whole country. I think in most markets, that's not making a difference.
No. I mean, well, look.
I don't think, anyway, in somewhere like Darlington, I don't think that's an issue.
No.
To be honest with you.
No.
Generally speaking, and in markets where we operate buy-to-lets, the rental price is what it is.
Yeah.
The market has gone up quite a lot in our area. Doesn't mean that we've got 20 people queuing up per property that comes up.
We do. That one, well, I just did that little TikTok video of one of our properties being trashed, and I was inundated on TikTok going, I'll rent it, I'll rent it, I'll rent it, I'll rent it. I was like, my God.
Yeah, I know. And then you tell them the price, and that then might be different.
Well, everyone knows, like, the demand is insane in that area.
Okay. The point I'm making is that I don't think what you can apply to prime areas of London will apply to somewhere like Darlington.
No, I agree. I agree.
So some aspects of the renters.
I don't think the renters. I mean, I think the
it's another nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it is. It is. For him, it's the clause 24 that's really hurting him.
But I also think it's a wider issue that people who might want to get into property investing will use as a reason maybe not to, or to sit on the fence.
Yeah.
Renters' rights.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, if you look at what they're trying to do, it's actually a good thing if you do it right.
Yeah.
This is the key.
Well, it's protecting tenants. I think, okay, the thing that is absolutely insane is, not being able to sell the property. What was it? Not being able to sell the property, or you have to sell the property.
If you evict,
on
the basis of you're selling the property, if you then don't sell it,
that's it.
You can't re-rent it for 6 months.
That's just mental.
Which is nuts, because in this market, who's guaranteed to sell? No one's guaranteed to sell. Sales fall through all the time.
Right.
And then you're actually just taking that property out of the rental pool.
Right.
It's one of those policies that someone who doesn't do this has sat in a room and gone, let's do that. That's a great idea. Not actually understanding the law of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
not understanding the nuances of the rental market in different places.
Or understanding that what happens in the property industry is like, by the time someone views a property, offers on a property, how long does that whole process take anyway?
Well,
and then if something happens, then...
Well, let's take London as an example right now. Anyone reading a newspaper about this will see that London prime properties are plummeting in value right now.
Yeah, 40%.
Okay, flats are like, some flats are like 40% off their sale peak. So if you've got a flat and you're renting out in London and you need to sell it, and then you got now a really tough decision. You've got a tenant in there, but you need to sell that property. You then evict the tenant based on, or tell the tenant to leave based on that. Then you've got no income. Then your property price is plummeted.
Yeah.
And you can't sell it.
Yeah.
And now you can't rent it again either.
Like
craziness.
Absolute nuts.
So all those things aside, I think for the majority of the rental or the majority of the property rental market, renters' rights is not going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah, it's a little thorn in our side, like additional stamp duty. It's like when that came out, the uproar around additional stamp duty was insane, and people saying, "That's it, I'm not going to buy any more buy-to-lets and give any more stamp to the government." And you're like, "Okay, fine, you stay where you are, and I'll keep going because it's just a cost of doing the business."
And this is also about buying the right thing, and this is what the government successive governments have tried to get people out of hoarding property. And stopping properties coming back to the market, first-time buyers. Okay, for professional investors, that's not what we do. We're buying to demand. You're buying the right kind of asset in the right kind of place where there's high demand for rental from a portion of the population that either doesn't want to or can't buy and needs to rent. Right? That's what a property investor should be doing.
Yeah.
So that's what the whole renters' rights and all the other policies have been brought in to try and tackle. And if you look at what's happening in the property market generally, you'll probably say it's probably worked for what they were trying to do.
But
there are going to be unintended consequences of doing that.
Yeah.
And the biggest unintended consequence I think is going to happen over the next few years, what's going to happen to rents?
They're going to go through the bloody roof.
Through the roof.
They're already starting to do that.
Because if you bully all of the amateur landlords out of the market, people still need to rent. What are they going to do?
Here's the other thing is that if the rents are so high, people are then going to deem themselves homeless. They're going to go to the government. They're going to say, "I'm homeless. I can't afford to rent anywhere. There is no rental properties that I can afford." And then they're going to become a social housing problem. And then the government's going to be like, "Shit, we don't have enough social housing. Oh, where are all those landlords that we get our houses from? Oh no, they've buggered off because we've screwed them." So government, the problem is coming right to your doorstep all over again.
I think the wheel will turn.
It's going to go full circle. The government's going to need us.
Yeah. Okay. Right. What we need to do?
That's Paul. He needs to up his rents. I can't believe for a minute that. And they're terraced houses, by the way. None of his are flats. So he's terraced houses.
He's kind of bought the right thing.
He's bought the right thing. He's done everything right. But we don't know about this development thing that's on the side that we have.
So we think there's more to it. I think he's maybe over-leveraged, taking money out to do a development that maybe has been stalled because of government red tape, planning, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, so what, if we were advising Paul, what would we tell him? First thing I'd say would be...
Well, we need to get the full picture for a start. I need to know about this development thing.
Put that to one side. Let's look at the portfolio and go, okay, look, to me, the rents look low.
Yeah, definitely.
So has he done, who's he using to do is he using an agent? Is he doing it himself? Is he doing it himself? Has he reviewed all the rents in the last 2-3 years? Because rents have gone up a lot in a lot of places in the country. So just by upping his rents by 20% might actually make a massive difference.
I also think he definitely needs to be speaking to a tax advisor about the structure.
Correct.
In which he has. We're in the situation, we've got properties in our own name, and there are solutions that are legit. That, yes, it takes a little bit of time, and you've got to be a little bit careful with lawyers, structuring things correctly, but actually there's solutions that could take his profit right the way back up to where it was before. So I think throwing in the cards and saying, "I've had enough." There's definitely more going on in this story. It's a great headline and it's a great topic of conversation for the the uninformed landlord haters to go, ha ha, look at him, serves you right. But actually, here's a guy who served our country, that's worked in an industry for 32 years, busting his balls to try and build something for himself, and the government has absolutely taken it from him, step by step.
The government changed the rules on it, but it doesn't mean so. Look, here's the issues with selling. You've got 70 properties in one town back on the market. Okay, that's immediately going to dilute the entire sales market there.
Well, it's at a time when interest rates are higher as well, so it's going to be slower to sell.
So I would say, and if you're looking to sell in bulk, no one's giving you full price. Okay, so there's a good chance we'll go in nothing.
The other thing he did that was a bit of a mistake was he basically set everything up when interest rates were around about the 2% mark, and now they're at like the 5.5% mark. So maybe the stress testing wasn't there where it should be. So look, he's like, I feel like he's 80%.
I was going to say, I think it feels like he's done 80% right.
Yeah.
If he'd taken maybe a bit of advice from someone that, done it before, they would have stress tested his numbers and said, look, at 100K value of property, 625 is not enough rent. Yeah. It's okay at 2% interest rates, but not at 5 or 6. That just doesn't work. So there's no stress test there. So that's the first thing. But secondly, he talks in his portfolio, he's got some HMOs.
Yeah.
So I look at, okay, right, great. HMOs much higher yielding. Can you HMO all of it? Is there a demand for that? Can you turn more of your properties into HMOs, up your yields, and make your return back that way?
Can you save on costs by going down the social housing route, taking out the letting agent, taking out some maintenance costs? But fundamentally for him, he's talking about in this article, the majority of it is this clause 24 section.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit of a red herring as well.
Yeah, I do.
I think take renters' rights out, that's a red herring.
Yeah.
Clause 24 is, but that could be solvable.
That is solvable.
Could be solvable. I'm not saying it's definitely solvable, but it could be solvable. Okay, but the other thing is, if you look at a fundamental level, the rents aren't high enough. Your costs are too high. Your rent's not covering it. Your mortgage costs have gone up. So it's all about the rents and the yields. Okay, so, and also there are mixed things around. Is he self-managing? I think that's
again,
a mistake.
We're literally getting peppered with a little bit of information here. There's a lot more. Like if we were working with this guy and advising him, we would really be under the skin of it. It would be right at the heart of everything. But I feel for the guy. Paul, if you're out there, reach out to us. We're happy to help and advise. For those of you that are listening and wanting to build your business, great. Fasten your seatbelts. This is the moment, because people like Paul are getting out, and we're going to be carrying on through the mire and just learning the new rules of the game and ducking and dodging and diving and weaving. I mean, that's all you can do in this industry right now, because it is pretty ugly. I was speaking to friends who are developers, and they're like, it doesn't stack up right now. The cost of labor, the cost of materials, all the lending, so whenever things get tough in one area, they'll get easier in a different area. So different strategies will ease up.
But things always change, and things tend to go around in circles, I find. So at the moment, it feels really tough. I think in a few years' time, it'll be, well, rents are really high. We've solved these problems in this way. There's other strategies you go into. You mentioned social housing. That's a way where you can rent out your houses to the government because they desperately need them.
More than ever now.
They will pay you market rent, and they'll take all the maintenance away, all the management away. So immediately, you've got no maintenance, no agency costs.
Yeah.
So you're looking at just pure profit. So there's lots of things you can do to turn that portfolio around. I would say it might be you sell a few of them, turn some into HMOs, social housing, the rest. Suddenly you're making profit again, and everything's good, and you ain't sold.
But he did say he was emotionally wrecked, and he wants to be on that boat sailing around the world. So there could be a lifestyle choice going on here rather than just the business.
Yeah,
stuff.
But if you try, there's ways of making that happen without having to panic sell everything.
We do both. We keep the business and do the boat and the sailing. So
Correct.
There we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. All right. Well, look, I think that's good one to talk about. There's lots of things.
Yeah, it was a really interesting, hard article to come back and read, because it's right, close to our hearts. But if you've enjoyed the episode this week, please do tune in again. We've got lots more to share with you about all things property.
Come and join our network at Property Wealth Club. There's a link in the show notes below. We're actually having a meetup
in person, human being contact on Saturday.
That's on this Saturday coming. So this episode will be going out just before that happens. So if you want to get involved in that, it's going to be in Coventry. find the link below. Come meet us.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see you. Otherwise, we will
Come and
see you on the
join
next
our
one.
gang. Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you soon.